Admiral Hyunwoo stood in the command center of Earth's main defense station and watched the message play again on the holographic display. The alien voice spoke in perfect human language, but the words carried death in every syllable. The Dominion fleet was coming to Earth, and they wanted complete surrender in 72 hours, or they would destroy every human city from space. The message had been broadcast across all human colonies, and everyone was supposed to see it and be afraid. Hyunwoo was not afraid, but he was angry. He had spent 30 years building Earth's defenses, and now these aliens thought humans would just give up without a fight. The Galactic Council had always treated humans like children who could not take care of themselves. They took human resources and gave almost nothing back. They made humans work in dangerous mines on dead planets and called it fair trade. Now they wanted to own Earth completely. The Admiral touched a control panel and opened a secure channel to Luna Base on the dark side of Earth's moon. Captain Jinne appeared on the screen, and her face was calm, but her eyes were hard like steel. She had been waiting for this day, just like Hyunwoo had been waiting. They both knew the aliens would come eventually, and they both knew what humans would do when that happened. Jinne spoke quietly into her communicator. The Council thinks we are weak because we have only 12 old cruisers in our visible fleet. They think we will run away or surrender like frightened animals. They have studied us for 50 years, and they believe they know everything about human military power. They are very wrong about what humans can do when we are pushed too far. Deep under the surface of Luna Base, massive machines began to wake up after decades of sleep. The Shadowgate project had been built in secret over many years, and only a few hundred humans knew it existed. While aliens watched Earth's surface and counted the small ships that moved between planets, they never looked into the dark spaces where humans really worked. They never imagined that humans could build anything important in the cold, empty regions between worlds. Lieutenant So-min received the evacuation orders at Colony Station 7 and watched civilian ships leave the system as fast as their engines could carry them. The colonists were scared, and many of them cried as they left their homes behind. Children pressed their faces against the windows of transport ships and looked back at the blue and green world that had been the only home they ever knew. So-min felt her heart break as she watched them go, but she also felt something else growing inside her chest, like a fire that would not be put out. The small Terran defense fleet moved into position around Earth, and their 12 cruisers looked tiny against the darkness of space. These ships were old, and their weapons were based on technology that aliens had sold to humans 50 years ago. Any alien commander looking at this pathetic defense force would laugh and think the battle was already won. The Dominion fleet was huge and powerful, and their ships carried weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Warlord Velthar commanded the Dominion fleet from his massive flagship, and he smiled as his sensors showed him the human defenses. He had conquered 17 different worlds, and every time the same thing happened. The weak species would see his fleet coming, and they would surrender, or they would fight and die quickly. Humans had been classified as Class D civilization, which meant they were barely smart enough to use simple tools. Their ships were slow, and their weapons were weak, and their military tactics were based on ancient ideas that real warriors had forgotten long ago. But Velthar did not know about the things that humans had built in the darkness, where alien eyes could not see. He did not know about the research stations that looked like empty asteroids, or the manufacturing plants that were hidden inside dead moons. He did not know that every human mining operation was also a military construction site, and every transport ship carried weapons components to secret bases throughout the solar system. Captain Jinne walked through the corridors of Luna Base and past rooms full of equipment that had been waiting for this moment. Human engineers and technicians worked quickly to bring systems online that had been tested thousands of times but never used in real combat. The artificial gravity generators hummed with power, and the fusion reactors that had been kept at minimum output for decades began to roar like caged beasts that were finally being set free. Admiral Hyunwoo opened another communication channel, and this one reached all the way to the Kuiper Belt, where humanity's greatest secret waited in the cold and darkness. The Shadowgate had taken 40 years to build, and it was bigger than most space stations. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a large asteroid mining platform, but inside it held technology that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about human capabilities. The Dominion fleet moved closer to Earth, and Warlord Velthar broadcast another message to the human colonies. His words were meant to break human spirits and make them give up hope. He told them about the cities he had burned, and the populations he had enslaved, and the worlds he had turned into lifeless rocks. He promised that Earth would suffer the same fate unless humans surrendered immediately and completely. Lieutenant Somin listened to the alien threats and felt the fire in her chest grow hotter. She thought about her family back on Earth and her friends who had joined the colonial service to build new homes among the stars. She thought about human children who would grow up as slaves if the aliens won this war. She thought about everything humans had accomplished despite being told they were too weak and too stupid to matter in the galaxy. The Shadow Gate began to charge its primary systems, and energy readings spiked across instruments that aliens did not even know existed. Deep space monitoring stations that had been disguised as communication relays started transmitting activation codes to ships that were hidden in the outer darkness. The real Terran Navy was about to show itself for the first time, and the galaxy was going to learn that humans were not the primitive species everyone believed them to be. Captain Ginny checked her chronometer and saw that they had 68 hours left before the alien ultimatum expired. She smiled because she knew the aliens were counting down to their own destruction. They thought they were giving humans time to surrender, but they were actually giving humans time to prepare the greatest military surprise in galactic history. The Shadow Gate was almost ready, and soon the true children of Earth would step out of the darkness to protect their home world. The stage was set for a battle that would reshape the balance of power throughout known space, and the aliens who thought they were hunting sheep were about to discover they had cornered wolves instead. The Shadow Gate came alive with brilliant light that had been waiting 50 years to shine, and the massive artificial wormhole generator began to tear a hole in space itself. Commander Taehyun watched from the bridge of his stealth destroyer as reality twisted and bent around the gate structure and opened a pathway that connected the outer system to hidden bases scattered across multiple star systems. The technology that made this possible was beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever imagined, and it was completely human in design. Dr. Yejin monitored the gate activation from her control center deep inside the hollowed asteroid Ceres and felt her heart race as decades of secret work finally showed its true purpose. The neural-linked weapon systems that she had spent her life developing were about to face their first real test, and every calculation had to be perfect because humanity would not get a second chance to surprise their enemies. The quantum entangled communications array allowed instant contact across impossible distances, and the fusion drives that powered the hidden fleet could push ships to speeds that would make alien commanders question their own sensors. The first wave of ships emerged from the Shadow Gate like ghosts materializing from a nightmare, and their hulls were so black they seemed to absorb light itself. Commander Taehyun led 50 stealth destroyers through the portal, and each ship was invisible to normal detection methods because human engineers had learned to bend electromagnetic radiation around their vessels. The weapons they carried were based on technology that had been reverse-engineered from ancient alien wrecks found in Earth's deepest ocean trenches and modified with human improvements that made them deadlier than their original creators had ever intended. Captain Minho commanded the flagship Soul's Vengeance, and the massive dreadnought dwarfed anything in the official Terran fleet that aliens had been watching for decades. As more ships poured through the Shadow Gate, the hidden scope of human military power became clear for the first time. Carriers that could launch 1,000 fighters appeared alongside battleships whose main guns could punch through any known armor, and support vessels that carried manufacturing facilities capable of building new weapons during combat. The Soul's Vengeance opened a communication channel to the Dominion fleet, and Captain Minho's voice carried across space with calm confidence that made alien blood run cold. His message was simple, but it contained the promise of violence that had been brewing in human hearts for generations. He told Warlord Velthar that the aliens had wanted to see what humans were capable of in war, and now their education was about to begin in ways they could never have expected. Warlord Velthar stared at his tactical displays as hundreds of unknown contacts appeared on sensors that had been calibrated to track primitive human technology. His ships had been designed to fight enemies whose capabilities were well understood, but these new vessels moved in patterns that seemed to defy physics and carried energy signatures that made no sense according to everything the Dominion knew about human science. The confident smile faded from his face as he realized that his intelligence reports had been completely wrong about Earth's military strength. The alien fleet had been arranged in standard battle formation that was meant to intimidate weaker species into immediate surrender, but the formation was designed for fighting conventional enemies who followed predictable tactical doctrines. Human ships did not follow any rules that aliens recognized, and they did not engage in the kind of honorable combat that civilized species were supposed to practice. Instead, they fought like the persistent predators that humans had always been, and they used every advantage they possessed without regard for fair play or sporting conduct. Dr. Yejin watched the battle unfold on holographic displays that showed the position of every ship in both fleets, and she felt proud of the weapon systems that had been her life's work. The neural links allowed human pilots to control their ships with thought alone and react faster than any biological reflexes should have allowed. The quantum entangled targeting systems meant that human weapons hit their targets with perfect accuracy across distances where normal targeting should have been impossible. Commander Tae-hyun led his destroyers in a coordinated attack that appeared from nowhere and vanished before alien gunners could acquire targeting solutions. The stealth technology was so advanced that Dominion sensors could barely detect the human ships, even when they were firing their weapons and moving at full speed. Each destroyer struck vital systems on enemy vessels and then disappeared back into the darkness, leaving confusion and damage in their wake. The alien formations began to break apart under the psychological pressure of fighting an enemy they could not see clearly or predict accurately. Dominion ships that had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves unable to target enemies that appeared and disappeared like deadly shadows. Their weapons were powerful, but they could not hit targets they could not lock onto, and their shields were useless against weapons that struck from impossible angles. Captain Minho coordinated the larger assault from his flagship bridge and used tactical doctrine that was purely human in its ruthless efficiency. The Shadow Fleet did not engage in the kind of formal battle lines that aliens expected, but instead swarmed around enemy vessels like wolves hunting elk. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Dominion had encountered before, and they used their advantages without mercy or hesitation. Lieutenant Dongwook piloted his fighter through the chaos of battle as part of the elite Shadowwing Squadron, and his craft moved through space in ways that made alien pilots dizzy just watching. The gravity manipulation drives allowed impossible maneuvers that seemed to violate basic physics, and human fighters could change direction instantly, without the momentum problems that limited conventional spacecraft. He watched massive alien capital ships desperately trying to swat human fighters that moved like angry hornets around giant bears. Warlord Velthar realized with growing horror that his fleet was not just losing the battle, but being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move his commanders made. The humans were not fighting like a primitive species defending their homeworld, but like experienced predators who had been studying their prey for years. Emergency transmissions flooded the Dominion communication networks as ship after ship reported damage from weapons that should not have existed. The true scope of human deception became clear as more ships emerged from the Shadow Gate and revealed that the tiny visible fleet around Earth had been nothing more than camouflage for military forces that rivaled any major galactic power. Human shipyards hidden in the outer darkness had been building vessels for decades while aliens counted the pathetic collection of aging cruisers that guarded the inner system. The real Terran Navy was enormous and equipped with technology that made Dominion weapons look primitive by comparison. Captain Minho opened another channel to the alien fleet, and his second message contained an ultimatum that turned the tables completely on the species that had come to conquer Earth. He told Warlord Velthar that humans did not surrender and did not retreat and did not forgive enemies who threatened their families. The aliens could leave human space immediately, or they could learn why Earth's children had spent centuries learning to hunt in the darkness between stars, where civilized species never dared to venture. The Dominion fleet that had come to Earth, expecting an easy victory, found itself trapped in a battle against enemies who fought without honor or restraint, and possessed weapons that could tear apart the finest ships in known space. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not the primitive species everyone believed them to be, and the lesson was going to be written in burning alien hulks, drifting dead in the cold vacuum of space. The battle for Earth moved into the outer darkness where humanity chose to fight on ground that favored the hunters over the hunted, and Admiral Su Jin coordinated the assault from her command ship Incheon Rising with tactical doctrine that was pure human predator instinct. The Shadow Fleet did not engage in honorable combat like civilized species were supposed to fight, but instead used every dirty trick and psychological weapon that millions of years of evolution had taught them. They struck from ambush and vanished before retaliation was possible, and made the enemy afraid to sleep or rest or feel safe anywhere in the cold vacuum of space. The stealth destroyers appeared from nowhere like death itself, given form, and struck vital systems on alien vessels before disappearing back into the darkness that had hidden them. Dominion ship commanders found themselves jumping at shadows and firing at sensor ghosts while real human ships moved through their formations like sharks swimming among fish. The alien fleet had been designed for traditional engagements where both sides lined up and exchanged fire until one side won or surrendered, but humans refused to fight by rules that would give their enemies any advantage. Lieutenant Dong Wook pushed his fighter through maneuvers that would have killed any normal pilot, and felt the gravity manipulation drives respond to his thoughts as if the machine was part of his own body. The elite Shadow Wing Squadron moved through space like a school of predatory fish, and each pilot was connected to the others through neural links that allowed them to coordinate attacks with impossible precision. They watched massive alien capital, ships that had conquered dozens of worlds desperately trying to target enemies they could barely detect on their sensors. Warlord Velthar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his tactical displays show the systematic destruction of forces that had never lost a battle in over 2 centuries of conquest. The humans were not just fighting back, but winning, in ways that should have been impossible for a species that had been classified as primitive and backward. His fleet was being torn apart by weapons that seemed to ignore basic physics and ship movements that violated everything the Dominion knew about space combat. Captain Yunseo led her boarding party through the corridors of a disabled alien cruiser that had been crippled by human weapons and left drifting helpless in space. The mission was not to capture the vessel or steal technology, but to send a message that would spread throughout the Dominion fleet and beyond. They planted a beacon deep in the ship's core that would broadcast across all enemy frequencies and tell every alien in known space exactly what they were dealing with when they threatened Earth. The beacon activated and transmitted a message that carried the voice of humanity itself across the darkness of space, and every word was chosen to strike fear into alien hearts. The transmission identified the senders as representatives of the human species and explained that humans did not surrender when threatened and did not retreat when attacked, and did not forgive enemies who tried to harm their families. The message told alien fleets to leave human space immediately, or learn why Earth's children had spent generations learning to hunt in the void where other species feared to venture. Admiral Su Jin watched the psychological warfare take effect as Dominion formations began to break apart under the strain of fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Human ships appeared and disappeared like deadly ghosts and struck with surgical precision before vanishing into the darkness that concealed them. Alien commanders who had conquered entire star systems found themselves unable to predict or counter tactics that had never been recorded in any military database. The Shadow Fleet used hit-and-run tactics that had been refined over decades of secret training, and each attack was designed to maximize damage while minimizing human casualties. Stealth destroyers would materialize from the void and launch devastating strikes against enemy weapon systems before fading away like nightmares. The aliens never knew where the next attack would come from, or how many human ships were actually hunting them in the darkness between the stars. Lieutenant Dong Wook rolled his fighter around an alien missile that exploded harmlessly and empty. Spacin smiled inside his helmet as he watched enemy pilots struggle with technology they could not understand. The gravity drives allowed human craft to accelerate in directions that should have been impossible and change course without losing speed or momentum. Alien fighters that had dominated battlefields across the galaxy found themselves outmaneuvered by human pilots who flew like they had been born in the vacuum of space. The Dominion fleet tried to reform into defensive positions that would protect their larger vessels from the swarms of human attackers, but every formation they adopted was countered by tactics that seemed to anticipate their moves. Human commanders had studied alien military doctrine for generations and knew exactly how their enemies would react to different situations. The Shadow Fleet exploited every weakness and prediction until Dominion forces were scattered and demoralized. Warlord Velthar received damage reports from across his fleet and realized that he was facing complete military disaster at the hands of a species that was supposed to be incapable of serious resistance. Human weapons were cutting through the finest armor in known space, and human ships were moving faster than anything on record. The intelligence reports that had classified Earth as a minor threat were not just wrong, but catastrophically incorrect in ways that would reshape galactic politics forever. Captain Yunseo and her boarding party completed their mission and returned to their ship as the disabled alien cruiser began broadcasting the human ultimatum across all Dominion frequencies. The message spread from ship to ship and system to system until every alien commander in the region knew that Earth was not the helpless victim they had expected to find. The beacon would continue transmitting until it was destroyed, and every word would remind alien forces that they were no longer the hunters, but had become the hunted. The battle moved deeper into the outer system where human forces held every advantage and knew every hiding place in the asteroid fields and ice clouds that provided perfect cover for ambush attacks. The Shadow Fleet had been designed to fight in the cold darkness where other species could not operate effectively, and human ships moved through the void like apex predators in their natural habitat. Alien vessels that ventured too far from their main formation were quickly surrounded and destroyed by enemies they never saw coming. Admiral Su Jin opened a communication channel to the retreating Dominion forces and delivered a final warning that carried the authority of humanity's hidden military power. She told Warlord Velthar that his fleet had exactly 1 hour to leave human space or face complete annihilation by forces he could not defeat or escape. The transmission was broadcast on all frequencies, so that every alien in the galaxy would hear the moment when Earth stopped pretending to be weak and showed its true face to the universe. The Dominion fleet began to retreat toward the edge of the solar system, with human ships harassing their withdrawal every step of the way and striking at any vessel that fell behind or showed signs of damage. The aliens who had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest found themselves running for their lives from enemies who pursued them like wolves chasing wounded prey. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been hiding its true nature for centuries, and the revelation would change everything about the balance of power among the stars. The retreating alien fleet limped toward the edge of human space, with human ships following like wolves tracking wounded prey, and General Jiwoo decided the time had come to reveal the true scope of humanity's deception to every species in known space. The Shadow Gate had been only the beginning of a plan that stretched across 3 centuries and involved the complete transformation of human civilization from victims into apex predators. Every alien commander who thought they understood human capabilities was about to learn how wrong they had been about Earth's children. General Jiwoo activated communication arrays that had been hidden throughout the galaxy for decades and began broadcasting on every frequency that alien civilizations used for official business. The transmission reached the Galactic Council chambers and Dominion command centers and every major population center where species gathered to discuss the balance of power among the stars. His message carried the authority of humanity's hidden empire and revealed secrets that would reshape everything about galactic politics. The general explained that every human colony that had appeared to be struggling was actually a disguised military installation, and every mining operation that seemed barely profitable was covering construction projects that rivaled the greatest engineering achievements in galactic history. Human settlements that aliens thought were pathetic attempts at expansion had actually been carefully planned strongholds in a network that now spanned 17 star systems. The weak and primitive species that everyone had dismissed as irrelevant had been building the largest military force in known space. Dr. Hai Young took over the transmission and began explaining the science behind humanity's technological revolution to alien scientists who had spent their careers studying primitive human achievements. While other species focused on conquering habitable worlds, humans had learned to thrive in the void between stars, where no other civilization had ever managed to establish permanent settlements. The fusion technology that aliens had sold to humans 50 years ago had been completely redesigned and improved until it surpassed anything else in the galaxy. Captain Wu Xiok led his reconnaissance squadron through the Shadowgate network to demonstrate the true extent of human expansion to the aliens who were listening to the broadcast. The artificial wormholes did not just connect different regions of the solar system, but opened pathways to star systems that were thousands of light years away from Earth. Humans had been secretly exploring and colonizing for decades while pretending to be confined to their home system and building infrastructure for an interstellar empire that nobody suspected existed. The reconnaissance ships emerged in the Centauri system, where massive human construction projects had been disguised as natural asteroid formations for over 40 years. Space elevators that reached from hidden planetary bases to orbital shipyards stretched across distances that dwarfed any engineering project attempted by other species. The manufacturing capacity that humans had built in secret could produce more warships in a month than most civilizations could build in a decade. Dr. Hai-Young continued her explanation and told alien scientists that human fusion drives were not based on the primitive technology everyone thought they were studying, but on completely new principles that allowed ships to reach near light speed without the massive energy requirements that limited other species. The stealth systems that made human vessels invisible used gravitational manipulation that bent space itself around the ships and created effects that alien sensors could not detect or counter. Commander Boram activated the final demonstration that would show every alien civilization the true extent of humanity's strategic planning and the scope of the trap that had been prepared for this moment. The shadow gates throughout the galaxy began opening simultaneously and revealed that humans had not just built hidden bases, but had created choke points in every major hyperspace lane that aliens used for interstellar travel. The network of artificial wormholes could be controlled from Earth and used to cut off communication and supply lines for any species that threatened human interests. Warlord Velthar received the transmission aboard his damaged flagship and realized that every strategic assumption the Dominion had made about humanity was not just wrong, but catastrophically incorrect. The species that had been classified as primitive and harmless had actually been studying alien military doctrine for generations and preparing countermeasures for every weapon and tactic in known space. Every diplomatic contact and trade agreement had been an intelligence-gathering operation that gave humans detailed knowledge of their future enemies. The revelation continued as General Jiwoo explained that every alien ship that had disappeared in deep space accidents over the past century had actually been captured and studied by human forces. Every colony that had gone mysteriously silent had been infiltrated by human agents who gathered intelligence about alien technology and military capabilities. Every diplomatic envoy that had never returned from missions to remote systems had encountered human forces that were learning how to fight wars that had not yet begun. Captain Wu Siok transmitted detailed scans of alien shipyards that had been under human surveillance for decades and showed that every major military construction project in known space had been monitored and analyzed by human intelligence services. The Shadow Fleet had been designed specifically to counter the weapons and tactics that alien forces would use, and every human ship carried detailed information about the weaknesses of enemy vessels that they would encounter in battle. Dr. Hai-Young revealed that human scientists had not just reverse-engineered alien technology, but had improved it in ways that the original creators never imagined possible. The neural link systems that allowed human pilots to control their ships with thought alone were based on alien brain-computer interfaces that had been enhanced with human understanding of consciousness and mental processing. The result was technology that gave humans reaction times and coordination capabilities that exceeded anything other species could achieve. The transmission reached the Galactic Council chambers where alien representatives sat in stunned silence as they realized that the species they had been exploiting for resources and cheap labor had actually been using them to gather intelligence and build military forces. Every trade agreement that aliens thought favored their interests had actually been giving humans access to technology and materials that were used to construct the Shadow Fleet. The primitive species that everyone had dismissed as irrelevant had been playing a game that was centuries ahead of anything their enemies understood. Commander Boram demonstrated the strategic implications of the Shadowgate network by showing how human forces could appear anywhere in known space within hours of receiving orders from Earth. The artificial wormholes eliminated the time delays that limited other civilizations and allowed humanity to coordinate military operations across distances that should have made centralized command impossible. No alien fleet could move without human forces knowing about it, and no enemy position was safe from immediate retaliation. Warlord Velthar watched his tactical displays show human ships appearing throughout the galaxy and realized that the Dominion fleet had not just lost a battle but had triggered a complete shift in the balance of galactic power. The humans were not revealing their capabilities because they were desperate, but because they were ready to claim their place as the dominant military force in known space. The species that had seemed weak and helpless had actually been stronger than anyone else all along. The broadcast concluded with General Jiwoo delivering an ultimatum to every alien civilization that had participated in the exploitation of humanity over the past 3 centuries. The time of human weakness was over, and Earth would no longer tolerate being treated as a source of cheap resources and expendable labor. Any species that continued hostile actions against human interests would face the full military power of an empire that stretched across the galaxy and possessed technology that made their own achievements look primitive by comparison. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across known space, and representatives from dozens of species tried to understand how completely they had misunderstood humanity's true nature and capabilities. Admiral Jamin stood before the assembled alien delegates not as a supplicant from a backwater world begging for mercy, but as the supreme commander of the galaxy's most powerful military force, delivering terms that were not open to negotiation. His words carried the authority of fleets that could appear anywhere in known space, and weapons that could crack planets like eggs. The Admiral's terms were simple and absolute, and left no room for the kind of diplomatic maneuvering that aliens had used to exploit humanity for centuries. All hostile actions against human interests would cease immediately, and any species found threatening human colonies or citizens would face complete military destruction. The centuries of exploitation, where aliens had taken human resources while giving almost nothing in return, were over forever, and reparations would be paid for every ton of material and every hour of labor that had been stolen from Earth's children. Dr. Sun-hee presented scientific data that explained how humanity had achieved technological superiority, while other species had been focused on traditional conquest and expansion. The key breakthrough had been learning to extract energy directly from stellar cores using gravitational manipulation technology that other civilizations had never imagined was possible. While aliens fought wars over habitable planets, humans had perfected the art of creating livable space anywhere they chose and building cities in regions that other species considered completely uninhabitable. The resource extraction that aliens had supervised for decades, believing they were exploiting primitive human mining operations, had actually been humans strip mining entire asteroid belts and planetary rings to feed construction projects that dwarfed anything else in galactic history. Every kilogram of rare metals that aliens thought they were stealing had been replaced by materials that humans extracted from sources that other species had never learned to access. The primitive mining technology that everyone had dismissed as inefficient was actually more advanced than anything else in known space. Captain Da-un commanded the final demonstration of human power as shadow gates activated simultaneously throughout the galaxy, and construction fleets poured through the artificial wormholes to begin building infrastructure that would support the new galactic order. The massive space stations that began taking shape at strategic points throughout known space were not invasion bases, but the foundations of a network that would allow humanity to maintain peace and stability across distances that had previously made centralized authority impossible. The construction vessels that emerged from the gates carried manufacturing facilities that could build entire cities in the void, and terraforming equipment that could transform dead worlds into gardens that supported billions of people. The industrial capacity that humanity had hidden for generations was finally revealed in its full scope, and alien observers realized that humans could reshape entire star systems according to their needs and desires. The species that had been dismissed as primitive was actually capable of engineering projects that made the greatest alien achievements look like children playing with toys. Warlord Velthar sat in a detention cell aboard a human vessel and watched through the viewport as ships moved through space with casual ease across distances that would have taken his people months to traverse. The artificial wormhole network allowed human forces to treat the galaxy as if it were a single star system, and coordinate operations that spanned thousands of light years, as if they were happening in neighboring solar systems. He finally understood that humanity had not emerged as a galactic power, but had been one all along, and had simply been waiting for the right moment to step out of the shadows. The Galactic Council chambers erupted in chaos as representatives from major species tried to understand the implications of humanity's revelation and the complete shift in galactic power structures that would follow. The military forces that every civilization had counted on for protection were suddenly obsolete compared to human technology, and the economic advantages that had supported alien civilizations for millennia were about to disappear as humans took control of resource extraction and manufacturing throughout known space. Admiral Jamin allowed the alien delegates to argue among themselves for several minutes before calling for order with a voice that carried the authority of fleets that could appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours. The time for discussion was over, and the new reality would be accepted, whether alien civilizations liked it or not. Humanity had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment, and every detail of the transition had been planned with the same careful attention that had hidden human military power for generations. Dr. Sunhee explained that the new galactic order would be based on cooperation and mutual benefit, rather than the exploitation and domination that had characterized interspecies relations for thousands of years. Humanity would share the benefits of its advanced technology with species that chose to work in partnership with Earth. But any civilization that continued to treat other species as sources of cheap resources would find itself isolated and cut off from the trade networks that supported modern galactic civilization. The space stations that were taking shape throughout the galaxy would serve as centers of learning and cooperation, where different species could share knowledge and work together on projects that benefited everyone, rather than enriching only the most powerful civilizations. The transportation network created by the Shadow Gates would be open to all species that respected the rights of their neighbors and contributed to the common good, rather than seeking to dominate those who were weaker than themselves. Captain Dayun supervised the construction of the first permanent human embassy station in the heart of the galaxy, where it would serve as a symbol of humanity's new position among the stars, and a reminder that Earth's children were now capable of protecting their interests anywhere in known space. The massive structure combined human engineering with architectural elements from dozens of different species to create a building that represented the cooperation and mutual respect that would define the new galactic order. Warlord Velthar realized, as he watched human construction fleets reshape entire star systems, that his species had made a fundamental error in trying to conquer humanity through intimidation and military force. The humans had never been afraid of alien threats, but had simply been waiting until they were ready to respond with overwhelming superiority that would end the conflict permanently. The galaxy's new masters were not conquerors who ruled through fear, but engineers who built systems that worked for everyone's benefit. The transformation of galactic civilization continued as human technology spread throughout known space, and species that had spent millennia fighting over limited resources discovered that cooperation with Earth opened up possibilities they had never imagined. The fusion drives that allowed humans to travel between stars as easily as other species moved between planets became available to civilizations that chose to work in partnership rather than competition with humanity. Admiral Jamin concluded the emergency session by informing the assembled delegates that the age of exploitation and domination was over, and a new era of cooperation and mutual benefit had begun. The species that had underestimated humanity for centuries would have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes and build better relationships based on respect and shared interests. Those who chose to continue the old patterns of aggression and exploitation would discover that Earth's children were fully capable of protecting themselves and their friends from any threat in the galaxy. The session ended with alien representatives returning to their home worlds carrying news that would reshape every government and military organization in known space, and the certain knowledge that humanity had become the dominant force in galactic civilization, not through conquest, but through superior planning and technology that had been hidden until the moment was right to reveal it. The galaxy would never underestimate the children of Earth again, and the new order would be built on foundations that could support peace and prosperity for all species willing to embrace cooperation over domination.